Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our illuminating content. Here is episode 198.
It's more about giving your child that ability to learn and to enjoy learning and to find the answers to things in whatever form that takes. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use a traditional curriculum to do that.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Ann Campbell. Ann is a homeschooling mom, English teacher, tutor, editor, writer, reviewer, homeschooling consultant, and chicken wrangler. She homeschools between music and art lessons, nature walks, day parks, lightsaber battles, field trips, cooking, and learning to drive, embracing the light bulb moments of discovery and cherishing their spontaneous life. She loves to teach, share resources and ideas, and encourage other parents and homeschoolers. As a certified English teacher with classroom experience in both middle and high school, she enjoys teaching high school literature and writing to homeschool students. They started their homeschooling journey when her oldest son was in kindergarten. She decided to take it one day at a time, 1 year at a time, jumping full force into life. And now here they are at 13 years later with a full-time college student, one in high school, one in elementary, and all still at home. While homeschooling through high school, her current college students successfully earned college credits through dual enrollment and literature and composition AP exams. He also earned 2 college scholarships, thus proving you can homeschool all the way through high school. They fly by the seat of their pants most days, spending as much time as possible exploring God's beautiful creations and seizing learning opportunities whenever they appear. Their days are spent living through literature and hands-on experience. Welcome, Ann.
Hi, how are you?
Sounds like you have a blast with your homeschooling.
We do.
Yeah, I'm so excited to pick your brain and to talk about how you do this and also how you mentor other families into homeschooling. But before we get into any of that, can you please tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I am a Navy brat. I grew up living all over the United States, and that will probably explain a little bit about my odd accent because I live in the South now. I'm not quite Southern. I have a little bit of everything in my background, and I've been married for 30 years, and I have 3 boys who, as you said in my bio, I have a college student who is a rising sophomore, and I have a rising high school junior and a rising 7th grader.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's awesome.
and in between dealing with all kinds of different levels of schoolwork, we have a lot of animals. And of course, the chicken wrangling refers to our 2 hens that live on our back porch. So
how fun.
we kind of have a menagerie.
That sounds like so much fun. Well, I read in your bio that you're a certified English teacher with classroom experience. To give our audience a little bit of a flavor or a story of how you initially chose to homeschool, what that journey really looked like to lead you to discover what you're doing now.
Well, I taught school for several years. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I taught 9th grade and 11th grade. And most of my students were remedial level. I taught English and grammar, and I loved teaching. And I think I went into it with a lot of enthusiasm. It was something that I wanted to do all my life. When I was a little girl, I played school all the time. And if I didn't have friends to line up to teach, I would line up stuffed animals and dolls and have school. So I think it's just something in my blood. And when I got into public school teaching, it was sort of a rude awakening in a lot of ways because there were so many things about it that were so difficult. And there were so many stories that were so difficult. And it just, I don't want to say that it took away my enthusiasm, but it really changed my view of what I thought teaching was going to be versus the reality of what it was. And so fast forward several years later, when we had our first child, homeschooling was something I had never honestly even heard of. When I was teaching, the only thing that I knew of that was similar to that was when I had students that would be on homebound education programs for various reasons, whether they were newly having a baby or under house arrest or medical problems. There were all kinds of reasons why, but they were not technically homeschooling because I, as the teacher, still had to prepare their lessons and send them with the visiting teacher, and she would bring papers back for me to grade. So technically they weren't really homeschooling at all. And that was all that I knew. And when my son, my oldest, was in K5, I had a 3-year-old and I was pregnant with my youngest. There was a family at our church who homeschooled. And that was really the first I ever had heard of what we know now as homeschooling. It kind of planted a little seed in my head that, this was something I might want to think about, because I was kind of scared of the idea of sending my oldest on to public school in first grade. It was something I really didn't want to do, but I didn't really know what my alternative was. So we were about 3 weeks into his K5 year. He was having a very hard time. He is a very smart kid, very inquisitive, and, he had never really been in a situation where he wasn't allowed to ask questions, or I wasn't privy to what was going on. And I started to see just within those first 3 weeks that something was changing. And that little spark that he had was kind of, getting snuffed out in a way. The thing that I think was the big turning point was when I got a phone call from his teacher saying that he had gotten, I don't know if you would call it a detention in kindergarten, but he had been forced to sit on the wall during recess and not allowed to play with the other kids because she said he was asking too many questions.
Oh my gosh.
And she felt that it was interrupting class because he kept asking questions. And, this child, granted, he's the kind of kid, he still is, thank goodness, that if you tell him something, he wants to know more about the reason why. And I think that he just was a square peg in a round hole in that classroom. And going back a little bit too, when he first started in the program, the first day, you're very nervous about sending your child, into a class at all. And there was a sign into the hallway that said, "No parents allowed beyond this point." And so all the parents and all the kids were sort of, waiting in the little foyer area, standing against the wall. And the teacher came out and had the kids all get in a line and march down the hall beyond that sign. And we were not welcomed to go past that sign. Oh. And that right there was really the turning point in my mind that I really wanted to know more about this homeschooling thing and what it was all about. And because I was pregnant at the time, I don't know why, but I thought, well, I'll wait until the beginning of first grade and we'll just stick it out through this year. And then, like I said, once we got 3 weeks in, I realized that it was something I needed to do right then. And my husband was 100% behind it. And we pulled my oldest out of school and we just jumped in and sort of dove in, actually. And I guess the history is still being written, but I was going to say the rest is history. Here we are years later, and we're still going strong.
That's awesome. Well, and I have heard that there are a lot of teachers that are, choosing to homeschool because they kind of see they have a firsthand vision or idea or anyway, window into that world and know that maybe it's not what they want for their own children. And then I've also heard some people say that because you're a teacher, it should be easier for you to homeschool. Do you feel like maybe there were things that, because you were a teacher helped or hindered you?
Well, I think because I have teacher training, that qualifies me in some ways as far as, I guess, figuring out curriculum and judging a good curriculum for us versus one that's maybe not as good. But really, as far as my qualifications to teach my own children, I don't think that having a teaching degree sets me up as being any more qualified than any other parent. I think as a parent, you just know your child, you know what's best for your child. You can read your child's emotions and you know their strong points, and you don't have to have a degree for that. The degree helps with some things, because I'm very strong in English and writing, and so that's an easy subject for me to teach, but I don't think that necessarily qualifies me beyond that. And that's one of the things that I try to tell people too. A lot of times I hear homeschool moms say there's no way they can teach high school, and their plan is to teach their kids up until that point and then send them to someone else for the hard subjects. And, honestly, I have found that the high school years are easier in so many ways because your child is more independent at that point. And you don't have to be a master of algebra in order for them to effectively learn algebra. There's so many tools and things out there now that make it possible to do the hard subjects that really anybody can do it.
Yeah. It tends to be a place we're scared, but one of the things I loved about your story is talking about how, the parents weren't allowed upon a certain point. And I think that should be a red flag to anybody, because I think the kids that are the most successful definitely have parents extremely involved in their education. At least that's the way I see it. When I look at people that are successful in educating themselves, it's because they've had that parental involvement most times. I mean, I'll definitely say that. And then the asking questions, I just don't get that. That just seems like a no-brainer for school, People should do that and be able to ask questions.
I think that the point of that was that, they wanted to have control over that environment, and they didn't want parents really, they wanted involvement to a point, but they wanted it on their terms, not on my terms. And, as far as him being too inquisitive, I think that was more of a matter of controlling the classroom setting. And she, evidently had a certain way of doing things that he just couldn't fit into that mold.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, we've talked about maybe some challenges that your son had in the traditional setting. What are some challenges you felt like you had along the way? And then what did you learn from those challenges?
So back around 2003, when we started, there were some homeschoolers in our area, but not as many as there are now. So I think my biggest challenge was finding a support system of other homeschool moms. And I mentioned the one family that we knew about, but they had 5 kids and, a lot going on. And she really didn't have time to take me under her wing and teach me what I needed to know. So a lot of it was just doing research and trying to figure it out as I went along. And as a new homeschooler, I've talked to a lot of people who have said the same thing. So I think that it is sort of a common feeling, but you kind of feel like somebody's looking over your shoulder, and you are so worried about doing everything right and complying with the law and, keeping good records. And it can be a little nerve-wracking, even as someone who had a teaching degree, just knowing that you're doing everything that you're supposed to. And, it only takes a few stories from people, you hear things sometimes of, social services was called on someone because they homeschooled, and, little stories and things like that plant into your brain. So you're always worried, am I doing everything I'm supposed to? And is it okay for us to go to the grocery store in the middle of the school day? Or what if somebody comes to the door and all my kids are in their pajamas and it's 2:00, and just things like that. And so I think my first year, I was so uptight over making sure I was doing everything right that I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have. And now, of course, we're much more relaxed. And I think that comes with experience and just realizing that, nobody is really looking over your shoulder all that much. And you've got to figure out what routine and what environment works best for you and your family. And if that means catching up on school over the weekend or doing some schoolwork late at night sometimes, that's okay. And now, I realize that, but at the time, I think that was my biggest hurdle. And also trying to find a support system of other homeschool moms that I could talk to face to face and get advice from and collaborate with and things like that. And that took a little while to find, but we did find that. And I think that's a huge source of support and encouragement and confidence.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that to be successful, and successful, which I mean is like sticking with it, is to find that good support system. Cause I think you feel so weird, cause you're one of the only ones in, out of the hundreds of people, maybe tens of people that doing it. And so you start to feel kind of out of it or whatever. But if you can find that support system, that's awesome. And I wish that we could all just take a chill pill when we first begin. But yeah, I do agree. It comes with a little bit of experience to really calm down and to realize that you're not going to mess up and that things are going to be fine. So I think that's great. What do you feel like your paradigm change has gone from, from that first beginning of you being an educator yourself to what you're doing now? How do you feel like your paradigm changed over time and with experience?
Well, I think that, as I said earlier, my training and my expectations of what it was going to be like in a public school classroom versus the reality of what it was like sort of, I guess, caused me to wonder when I started homeschooling if I needed to try to recreate some sort of structure in my own home. And, I guess, and what I mean by that is not necessarily the hours of the day spent schooling, but going through a textbook and doing every single thing in the book and kind of letting my curriculum rule my life. And let me tell you, that first year, one of the biggest mistakes that I made was buying a full-blown curriculum the very first week we started and trying to cover every single thing in it, along with raising a 3-year-old and dealing with the fact that I was very pregnant at the time. And, it was just driving my son and I crazy to try to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and cover every single page. And a little bit of that, I think, came with that training that I had and having someone in the classroom coming and checking and doing teacher evaluations and making sure, my lesson plans were written out exactly like they should be and turned in on time and all of that. And that feeling, like I said before, of somebody looking over my shoulder. And so I think the biggest change that I made was learning that my curriculum is a tool for me to use. It's not the master of what I do. So I learned to relax a lot. I learned to skip things that weren't working or to stop doing something that wasn't working and try something new. And I learned that you don't have to do every single page in the book or every single problem in the math workbook in order to learn the material. It's more about giving your child that ability to learn and to enjoy learning and to find the answers to things in whatever form that takes. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use a traditional curriculum to do that. So I think really my whole training and everything sort of turned upside down in a way, because I'm the complete opposite now, I think, than I was before. I have all kinds of books and resources in our homeschool room that my kids have access to. They have access to the internet. And a lot of times, we'll just take a subject that we're interested in and we'll go on field trips and read books, and they'll do some research on the internet, and we won't even pull out a textbook. In fact, I don't know if we even have any legitimate textbooks at all anymore. I think we just use such a combination of sources now to learn things. And it's a whole lot more fun and a whole lot less stressful.
When you're talking about your son's first experience of asking too many questions and stuff, I think sometimes as a homeschooling family, at least this is a huge mistake that I made, is that I did treat it a lot like school in the fact that I was just really strict with that curriculum, where I wasn't letting him go outside of that question or seek other, interests and stuff. And so I think that that's definitely something that does change over time with experience, that, you just relax. And I love the fact that you don't really have any, you're using such a group of different resources out there that you don't really have that push to have to stick with that, because you can see, I think maybe that learning comes in any form. Is that correct? Or
yes,
awesome.
It does. And I think just your child having a joy to learn is really the number one goal, because they hopefully will be learning all their lives. And I think that the public school mindset that I had was that, you're supposed to learn this material this year in this grade. And, that's really not, anybody that has homeschooled for a while knows that your child may be doing one thing at one grade level and one thing at another grade level. And usually the younger kids are sitting in when the older kids are doing read alouds and things like that. So, you might have a 6-year-old listening to a book that is intended for a 15-year-old. And, it's just a very organic thing. And my son, actually, my oldest son, who just completed his freshman year at college, one of the things that he would come home and say at the end of the day a lot, I heard this a lot, was that the other kids in the class really didn't care at all about being in the class. And it was so foreign to him that they didn't want to get in there and learn. And he was signing up for classes that he wanted to learn more about. And it wasn't because it was a requirement that he had to do. He just has a totally different way of looking at things. And I explained to him that in my experience as a teacher, unfortunately, a lot of kids go to class because they have to, and they're doing it so that they can get it over with, and they're not enjoying it. They don't have that spark for wanting to find out more now. And I'm not talking about every child, because it doesn't apply across the board, but I think that there are a lot of kids that do feel that way. And I think that part of it is just the indoctrination into the public school mindset that, you have to follow these certain rules. You have to sit in your desk for this amount of time. And there's not a lot of freedom and flexibility for them to do hands-on group kind of learning in a lot of situations. Now, I know that in some schools that is changing, but in my experience, that was not the case. And I think that, as a homeschool mom, the thing that I want more than anything is for my kids to enjoy whatever they choose to do and to continue to learn more and to have the tools to know how to do that and not feel like they're trapped in a situation that they're just trying to get it over with.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think was so vital about catching that, your son could ask those questions and stuff. And that's why I think what we've discussed previously of really trying to, not stifle yourself with the curriculum so that it creates that love of learning, so that, you're learning along with them and that they're seeing you enjoy it and they're enjoying it and they can explore in areas that really interest them. I think those a lot of great stuff in there. So thank you. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit more about your website and how you help others. It's really a fabulous, she's got all kinds of different tabs. Let's talk about that and what that all looks like.
Well, my website started off more as a personal blog kind of journal and kind of gradually evolved into what it is now as I started doing a little more with area homeschoolers. And I currently teach classes to homeschoolers in my area, which I'm working really hard to turn into online classes. I teach literature and writing and public speaking and test taking skills. And it's just been an awesome joy. So I've been kind of trying over the past couple of years to turn my website more into a resource and less into a personal journal. And so I have a lot of homeschooling advice and help, and also homekeeping is one of the areas that I'm trying to kind of grow a little more of the resources that I offer. As I mentioned, we have chickens, and that's been a huge learning experience. My kids brought home eggs from a field trip to an alpaca farm several years ago, and one of my sons said, "Mom, are these eggs fertile?" And I said, "Well, they probably are, because there were a lot of chickens and roosters." And I said, the odds are that, yeah, they probably are. And so we decided to go and get an incubator and see what would happen. And I had no idea at all what I was doing. And I did not think these eggs were going to hatch. But my kids faithfully turned the eggs every day and, kept tabs on what was happening. And lo and behold, they all three hatched, and they all were healthy chickens. So now we have pet chickens. I think they're about 4 years old now. And so we've done a lot of things, just different learning activities with the girls. And we have other pets as well. And so I write a little bit about that. And my youngest son is an aspiring chef, and he's a very good cook. He's taken cooking classes, and he really has a passion for that. And so I've got some cooking with kids articles and just various other homekeeping type organizing and tips and do-it-yourself projects and things like that. Lots of nature study ideas and camping and just kind of a little bit of everything that we are into.
Before we go on, let's listen to these messages.
Changing a paradigm takes some study, but like me, you are probably super busy. That's why we've teamed up with Audible. Go to our website, theluminousmind.net. Get a free month of Audible with 2 audiobooks, thousands of titles in exchange for only books that you absolutely love. You too can be learning on the go to keep that fire burning.
I'm doing okay. Everyone the real, let's go round my way. High definition like a Blu-ray. Bitch in my mouth, so call me Kanye. Now break it to the left, to the right. Hey. Now break it to the right, to the right. Hey. Now break it to the front, to the right. Just to the right, to the right, to the right. Now break it to the left, to the right. Hey. Now break it to the right, to the right. Hey. Now break it to the front, to the right. Just to the right, to the right.
Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Ann Campbell, embracing the light bulb moments of discovery. Well, and I failed to mention her website's called mylearningtable.com, so that's what we're talking about, mylearningtable.com. When you click on it, it says Real Homeschooling. She talks about all kinds of, embracing the light bulb moments of discovery. And she did mention she has a section on there called housekeeping, which I thought was really interesting. As homeschooling moms, we definitely have our hats, many different hats. And I think that's really one area of that we really don't talk a lot about is how to take care of all of these things that we're supposed to do. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we can find there?
Well, hopefully in the future there will be more recipes. That's one thing that we're working on, and just a lot of ideas of, I think to me, homekeeping really means it encompasses everything to do with your family and your home beyond just the 3 R's of homeschooling. And, as a homeschool family, you're learning all the time. You do a lot of things together as a family. You're together all the time. And so, it can sometimes be, I guess, overwhelming that you have so many things going on all the time. Your house is never really still. Yeah. And so it can be a challenge, especially when you've got younger kids, just to figure out how to get the homeschooling done, the grocery shopping, meals on the table, and to kind of keep the top layer of dust off the furniture as much as you can. And so hopefully the articles you find there will help and offer some of the things that we've learned over the years that make the house run a little more smoothly.
Well, and on that section, one of the things that she has is encouragement for moms. So I obviously, when we're wearing all those different hats, we do need some encouragement. So definitely check that out for that. Another point that I want to discuss on the website is your book list, your themed book list, what to read on Wednesday. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's been a project that I've been working on for about a year and a half. Every week on Wednesday, I feature a different theme and a list of recommended books that fit that theme. And all the books that I recommend are books that we've actually read, and a lot of them we also own. We have a ton of bookcases, and we also use the library as one of our primary homeschooling resources. When I was a younger homeschool mom, one of the things that I loved to do was to sit down at night and read with my kids. And I still do that, even though the older 2 are not always in on it. My younger one and I are still pretty faithful about it. And when my kids were younger, I would always we would have a chapter book, and then we would probably have 2 picture books. And that would be our reading every night. We would read a chapter from the book and then 1 or 2 picture books, depending on how long they were. And I tried, as I loved that time with my kids, but I also tried to start finding a common theme between the books so that it kind of, in a roundabout way, tied in with something else that we were learning about. For instance, when we were raising painted lady caterpillars for science, we'd have time where we would read books about butterflies or books about caterpillars, and nonfiction and fiction. And so I figured out that it was hard, to go to the library and just find books, to search online and find books that were actually worthwhile. So I started compiling lists way back then, and now what I'm doing is making these lists available on my site every week. And for most of the lists, we also have free printable lists that you can just print out the list if you want to take it to the library with you. But if you're doing any type of unit study, or you just need a book that fits a particular theme, I've already got a lot of books on the list. A lot of different themes on the list, and you can go to that themed book list and see a list of all the topics that we've covered so far and some of the upcoming ones. And I hope to stick with that, because I think that that can be a good resource for really any age child. It doesn't necessarily have to be when they're in the elementary years, because in one of my literature classes, for example, a high school level class, we have also covered a couple of picture books that tied into the topic we were talking about, and the older kids loved them just as much as the younger kids do. So Hopefully that'll be a big help to people.
Well, and it's awesome. So if you click on her website, go on her website and you just click on themed book list, just on the top part, it brings up the alphabetical one. But if you go down to what to read on Wednesday, it's kind of like a book overview, correct? I mean, of anyway, kind of some ideas about different books, or what do they call it when you give a book?
I have some reviews in there, but a lot of it is just
that's what it is.
Yeah, a lot of it is just a list of sort of an annotated bibliography in a way, and they're all organized by theme. So I think the one this week was Boredom Busters for road trips. So if you're traveling this summer and need some ideas for some activity books and audio books to take along in the car, that's what you'll find on the one that published today, actually. I'm always looking for suggestions as well. It's really fun to delve into topics that when I start looking, I think, oh, there's no way I'm going to find any books that fit this theme. And then I kind of follow the rabbit trail and find way more than I expected.
That's great. Well, and I really love her website is extremely organized. Like if you go under the homeschooling tab, she's got it split up in, early learning, elementary, middle school, high school, special needs. All of those are split up also along with classes and printables. Do you want to just give us an idea of what maybe you might find under each one of those topics, or each one of those age groups, I should say?
Well, most of the articles are organized by subject and also by age group. So if you're looking for something specific to a certain age, you'll find it there. You can also go into the search bar if you're looking for science or math or something like that. And if you just enter in that word, you'll see articles for every age group all together, or organized by subject. My classes tab right now those classes are only offered in my local area, which is the upstate of South Carolina. Like I said earlier, I plan to get those classes online, hopefully by the end of the year. I've been writing lesson plans and stuff as I've gone along with the live classes. I've been doing those classes for several years in my area. So I had some people contact me over the past couple of years asking if the classes are available anywhere else. So I feel like hopefully that'll be something that will be helpful. The printables tab is a library of all kinds of printables that library is actually growing every week as I add more to it. And you can just click on pretty much anything in there and download them right away. And a lot of them are tied into the What to Read Wednesday post. So if you're covering a certain topic and you want some worksheets for your kids to do along with the topic, or just a library checklist, you can find all of those in there.
That's just awesome. I'm just amazed at the resources that are available anymore, especially from amazing ladies like Anne that go above and beyond and really organize it and put it in a useful form for parents and for the students. Let's talk about maybe some successes you've seen, how you have helped others with your website and with some of the resources that you have on there.
some of my personal successes are that I have had some of my writing published. I've written for a few different homeschool magazines, and I am still, working part-time as a freelance writer. So that's something that I really enjoy, where I can write homeschool encouragement or homeschool tips, and it goes out to an audience way larger than just my website. And also, I'm hoping, as I said, for my classes to grow. I've already had just wonderful experiences with the homeschoolers in my area that have attended my classes. We meet currently every other week for class, and then on one of our off weeks, we have a field trip at least once a month. And that has just been such a joy. We've had some wonderful experiences together. One was we were reading The Diary of Anne Frank, and we organized a field trip to go to the local synagogue, and the rabbi talked to our group and actually had some artifacts that had been rescued from, burned down, knocked down temples in Nazi occupied countries, and they had scrolls and different things that the students could see. And we also had a guest speaker attend that day she was a Holocaust survivor, and she told us her story. And so the kids got to hear firsthand from a person that actually experienced what they were reading about in the book that we were studying. They were able to see firsthand these artifacts from that time. And another thing that we did during that unit, when we were still on the topic of World War II, was we went to the American Legion War Museum in our area, and World War II veterans came and talked to the group, and the kids got to ask them questions and spend some time just talking with them one-on-one. And those kind of experiences are really what homeschooling is all about. And, even, beyond just with my own kids, being able to share that with other kids in our area, it's just, those kind of moments are just priceless, because you can see that, they're living the history. They're not just reading about it. So I think those are really just some moments that I feel like it would count as homeschool successes. And then the fact that, my kids I'll just have to brag, my kids are awesome. I have just the greatest kids, and they're polite and well-mannered and caring and helpful. And I just love having so much time with them and seeing them blossom into men. I definitely count that as a success.
Yeah, that is one thing. I think there's so many tiny little benefits that we get from homeschooling. I mean, anywhere from field trips that are more than once a year, where they can actually get out and be part of the community. And then also having, some of my friends and I joke about they're overmothered, but it's really not a bad thing, because they have the politeness, and they have just because they're with you and they're gleaning so much of that from you. And there's just tiny little successes that are all over it that you can't even quantify sometimes. So that's great. Well, let's talk about, you've already talked about turning some of your classes into, full internet classes that people can access. But what do you feel like your long-term goals are? You're kind of at the end, kind of the middle still with with your other kids, but how are you wrapping this up, and how are you moving on, type of thing? Does that make sense? How do I say
that? Well, in addition to building the classes, my goal for my website is I guess to become a mentor for other homeschool moms, because I didn't have that when I first started, and I really needed it. And if I can do anything that helps another mom feel encouraged and feel like she can do it and that she can stick with it, then, that's something that I really want to do. So that's my overriding goal right now. Just seeing my other two kids as they grow and graduate from homeschool, I'm hoping that they will have the confidence to go after their own dreams, and that, like I said earlier, that they'll feel that, they have an enthusiasm for whatever it is that they want to do. My youngest is determined he's going to be a professional chef and has already started planning his restaurant. My middle child is very hands-on. He kind of has the mind of an engineer. He likes to figure out how things work. He also is a drummer. And so I really don't know at this point where that's going to take him. I think if he could become a professional video game player, that might be something he'd be really interested in. My oldest is, he wants to be a filmmaker, and he's doing very well in school so far. He's studying English and film and French. So I consider, even though they're doing the work, I consider their successes my successes. So, my long-term goals, I guess, is to hopefully see that continue with them, and I get a lot of joy from that.
Yeah, we do as mothers, and especially where we put so much time and effort into just being there and stuff, that sometimes when they're successful, we're just beaming because of that. That's great. Well, let's talk about, you talked about how you want to be a mentor for other homeschooling moms and stuff. Do you feel like that is the legacy that you want to leave, or is there something else?
I think so. And, a lot of homeschool moms have days where they second guess themselves a lot, and they feel like they're looking ahead at the bigger picture, and the word transcript looms over. And I hear a good many moms say, they're going to stick with it, hopefully till middle school, and then beyond that, they just could never do a transcript or any of that kind of thing. And so they're going to let the professionals handle it. And so, I hope to serve as an example that you can do it, and also hopefully offer some encouragement through my experiences that, just reassurance that you really can do it. And I feel so strongly that high school is not the time to send your child to school if you've had them at home up until that point, because that relationship, that bond that you have with your child is so precious. And if you lose that, once you lose it, it's gone. Yeah, I'm a product of public schools myself. And, admittedly, when I was going through my teenage years, my mom and I were not extremely close. We didn't see eye to eye on anything. And, I've so far up to this point, I've not really experienced that with my own children. We still talk about things, and I know where they are and what they're doing. And they know that my husband and I have an open door policy, and they can ask us any question that they ever have. And, I think a lot of kids, particularly that are not homeschooled, they find those answers in their friends or in other ways that are not necessarily healthy. And so, I just want to assure moms that they can do it, and it is worth it.
Yeah. Well, and I think the high school years is really where you can, because you've created kind of a structure, or help them create their own structure, where you can really see them take off and fly. You talked about how your son did a lot of AP classes, and there's a lot of ways that kids that are homeschooled can access a number of things outside of the community that are, like you said, a little more healthy, that let them be part of the real world. Let them have that experience of, driving their own education. Those are such important things. And sometimes when we just turn them back to the public school, they really lose that, like all of those natural things that they picked up from being in our homes. And awesome. I love that. Before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words for our listeners? And then give us your contact information, how our listeners can get access to all these wonderful resources that you put on your website.
Well, I would say going back to what I learned as a young homeschooler, don't be a slave to your curriculum. Don't let that rule your life. You don't have to check off all the boxes. And, use it as a tool, and have the confidence to come up with your own ideas for what's going to work the best for your family and your situation. And also, there's a lot of help out there. And now it's just awesome how much help is out there. You don't have to necessarily go it alone with the harder subjects. And if you're not that great at writing, you can find a class or a resource online. If you're not that great at algebra, you can find a class or a resource online. There's just so much out there. And one thing that we did, algebra was the big thing for me that was very intimidating, because that's not my area at all. And we discovered in high school that my son could take that class as a dual enrollment class at one of the universities in our area. So not only did he learn algebra for high school, but he also got college credit for it. So and I didn't have to teach it. So it was a win-win-win for us.
Yeah.
And find a support group, however it is. If it's an in-person, hopefully in your area, there are homeschoolers that you can connect with and go to park days with and things like that. But if not, there are tons of support groups online, Facebook groups and different things that you can get involved in to seek help and guidance, and just a little pat on the back sometimes that it's going to be okay and you can keep going.
Oh, I love that. One of the things I want to kind of touch on maybe was something that you said, but maybe it's just my own feeling of the advice that you've been given. But, as a mother, I think we do have some divine help with us that helps us know that child, helps us understand what resources that we can find, or, and that we have that ability, maybe even more so than, like you had said, the professionals, because there are some things that a professional necessarily can't know, and that is your child so intimately as we do as parents. And anyway.
That's absolutely right. And it is so true. And, you're the one that taught your child how to walk and how to talk and how to feed themselves and dress themselves and go to the potty by themselves. And, those things are a lot harder to teach than most subjects, honestly. And so, I think that, the whole idea of homeschooling is it's not like you have certain hours of the day that are for school and certain hours of the day that are for life. It's just, it's all covered in everything that you do. And your child, what will help your child and what won't. Just another little side note, I've had several friends over the years who have kids with special needs who have not found the help that they needed in the school system and have brought them home, and the kids have thrived. So, you don't always have to trust the expert.
Yeah. Sometimes doing it yourself can actually be a benefit for your kid like that. I mean, in all situations. So give us your contact information, how we can get in touch with you.
Well, you can find my website at www.mylearningtable.com. And I am at Learning Table on Twitter and Instagram, and Learning Table Homeschool on Facebook. If you have any questions and would like to email me, it's hello@mylearningtable.com, and I will read your email and answer it the best that I can. And if I can't help, I can send you hopefully to somebody that can. So feel free to reach out to me online. I would love to get to know you.
Well, and as we've been talking, or, as I've been perusing her website too, I mean, just the wealth of knowledge that she has is just such a great thing to access. And I just really encourage you to do that. You can go to mylearningtable.com. She's got a Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, but we will be sure to hook all that up or link all that up on our website as well. But thank you so much, Anne, for coming on and joining us and helping to light our minds on fire on this really important topic of educating your children at home. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Anne Campbell, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list. Then check out the Services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of illuminating content, go to the Sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us, leave us a review, share our content. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.